Ok, here we are. Con voi,
Con
con
voi.
te, Esperide, welcome back. I think
Con-
you have the record. You have the only one that met our live for 3 times, maybe. Okay.
3 times.
So yes, 3 times. This is the third time. So first of all, we chosen to talk about the Temple of Humankind and especially the liberation of the Temple of Humankind, because a few days ago, the 3 of May is in the Damanhurian calendar, the liberation of the Temple of Humankind. We have to explain what it means and all the story that is in the background. First of all, I want to apologize to our users because we are receiving a lot of questions today because of the topic of today. So I'm not sure we will be able to reply to everyone. So we'll do the best, Esperide.
So,
Someone,
may I say something? So
yes.
I want to say my memory is not so good. So thank you for reminding me of this great honor of being here for the third time. And I want to remind you that it was the 3rd of July, not the 3rd of May.
Oh,
So
sorry, the 3rd of July.
And I remember that so well
This
because
is
you know,
not
first July, then my life completely changed. So I cannot forget the month.
because in Italy the weather is not July weather. Okay, so someone reading the title was asking us um, about why we had to do a battle to conquer the Temple of Humankind, because of course the Temple of Humankind is built inside the Damanhurian territory. But this is part of the story.
Yes.
I want to ask you something, Esperide. First of all, now I'll ask you some question about the story in general. I want to talk about you in the second part, okay? I have some specific question for you, but after. So first of all, to talk about the story. So the Temple of Humankind was built in secret. So only the Damanhurian, and not all the Damanhurians, only the Damanhurians that were living in Damanhur from some here, they were working to build the Temple of Humankind during the weekend, during the night. So an incredible experience. And in a certain moment, someone that lived Damanhur many years ago asked to the Damanhurian to have money in order to keep the secret. We chosen not to play that game. That's all. And so the police arrived to Damanhur, and so here the story began. It was a very chaotic moment, a very also I remember like dramatic days. Very few people there were still optimistic. To be honest, I think only Falco were still optimistic, smiling. Now we say because there was a strategy in the background of this story. So, can you explain about us about what happened in that moment and what was the risk for Damanhur?
Thank you, Nyomo. So I will
Sorry for
also,
a very long.
it's very important you gave the context. So
Yes.
I will try to put this again in another context and reply the first question also that you asked. Because to understand why the temples of humankind were a risk, we have to understand Italy in those years. And what was going on, because today it's very different. Everyone is talking about awakening. Also in Italy, there's lots of movements about consciousness and self-development and a completely new understanding of the relationship between human beings and the divine. But in those years, when the temple started, which was 1978, and up to the moment in which they were discovered, because that's what it is, you know, they've been discovered by the police and then through that by the world. It was a moment in which basically Italy was still very conservative and very Catholic. still very Catholic, that's the state religion, but there is much more freedom now. In those years, the first movements of what was then called New Age started to appear, and the establishment was very worried. So everything that was happening outside the norm, outside what was considered the normal state religion, was kind of alarming and very often perceived as scary. So when the judge ordered the police to come, because there was the main judge of the area that came, he was convinced that he would find something dangerous. He was really convinced that the Damanhurians were doing something bad. He was so convinced of this that 1 year before, he had ordered another raid. You surely remember because you live there. I didn't yet, but I read it on the newspaper. I remember the titles: "Police raiding the city of the sun" was one of the titles that I read. I was living in Milano at the time. And so he had already sent police, lots of police. I remember that raid was told me they arrived very early, like 7 a.m. in the morning. They came with helicopter, with dogs, convinced that they would find, a hamlet of terrorists or drug.
Searching for the drugs, yeah.
Exactly. And they didn't find any.
I remember they opened the food in the kitchens, searching for something.
Yeah, so this story now, if our viewers are interested, they can find the story in the comic book about Damanhur that we wrote many years later. So there is the story, exactly the little scene of the carabinieri looking into Basil, thinking of finding something. Luckily, in those years, I have to say, maybe Italy was still pretty naive. And so nobody planted anything. Like the police didn't find anything because nothing was here. There was no one that put things that were not there. So that first raid ended with lots of problems for Damanhur in terms of the administration, because they blocked the main company of Damanhur at that time, just with an excuse, just to look through the books. And that kept the company basically in check for many years. And then
using the banks.
Yeah, we had to close it simply because they made it not possible to operate it, even though there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. But 1 year later, when the judge came for the temples, he was angrier. He was even more convinced that he would find something. And more than anything, he had a map, because that man that you talked about before had left Damanhur 10 years before and knew of the temples and was convinced that he knew where the entrance was. Now, in those 10 years, the entrance had been moved. So when the judge arrived, he could actually not find the entrance, and he threatened the community to literally blow up the mountain, because he came with explosives, because he couldn't find the entrance. So the situation, yes, was very grim at that time. And the reason why it was very risky, even though it was on our land, was because this was built inside a mountain. Nobody believed in the authorities that it had been possible to build them without ruining the mountain. And because we are in a protected area in the mountains, tampering with the mountain meant a possible geological risk. So this was the highest, well, it's the second highest crime possible in Italy after treason. So the first one is you're against the Republic, and the second one, you put at risk geology, because that could could really damage people. So nobody could believe that this was possible. And indeed, even if we think of it today, it was a miracle. I mean, there's no logic behind the fact that people with no experience, with no engineers, no architects could build such a complex of temples inside a mountain without tampering with the mountain. So going forward, 4 years later, when we finally managed to win all the legal causes at court, it was because we were able to demonstrate, thanks to aerial photographs of the forest police of those 10 years, that nothing ever was changed in the morphology of the mountain. So that crime that was very serious fell, and that at that point it became more of a media, public perception battle to speed up the decision that eventually came with the government by the government, the decision to save the temples, and not only save them, but entrust them to the Damanhurians. Because when it became clear that the temples were not a crime, what happened was that the local town hall wanted to seize them to turn them into an amusement park. Because then they were saying, well, we cannot have temples. This is a Catholic country. This is not a good idea. Let's keep them, but let's turn them into an amusement park. There was another very critical moment that came after the main crisis. And again, like with the temples, that the main risk turned into a huge, wonderful opportunity to open Damanhur and the temples to people from all over the world, and sped up the process of making clear that the temples were a gift for humanity. The second challenge made it so that we started to really be engaged in local policies, in local politics, and now we've been administering the town of Vidraco, where the temples are, for about 20 years now, Gnomo. The mayor is a Damanhurian, and we've been able to prove that it's possible to have policies inside an intentional community that can benefit the community at large. And this is why our mayor and our council keeps being elected, because we've proven that we are able to be in service to the larger community. And I think this is another wonderful gift that came from those very difficult years.
Yes. To point up, eventually all the problems all around the Catholic Church, all the skepticisms, all the fears about Damanhur, they were not enough for the legal process. But the environmental problem was the only legal way to stop Damanhur. But we proved that everything was completely legal, without any, and with a lot of respect for the wood, that today actually is part of the Temple of Humankind, is sacred, also like the temple, the underground temple. But of course, many people they were asking if the Catholic Church had anything to do with this battle. You say yes.
Well, in the beginning, and again, in the beginning, because then we became very friendly with many sociologists of Catholic matrix, that they are still very good friends with us. We just had this wonderful conference about Falco, and one of them, who's actually a Catholic priest, came and was one of those who spoke more highly about Falco. So there was, again, that was the big crisis. But out of that, we managed to create many friendships, and really there was the opportunity to share much more of our philosophy. And also it was very useful for us, because having to face criticism or comments from people that have different ideas offers a mirror that makes you go deeper. So this was very, very important also for us. Just like another important gift, of the resolution of the supposed environmental crime, was that at the end, the judge ordered a 2-year-long monitoring inside the temple. So we had water tanks, we had cameras in all the halls to make sure everything was super safe before we could open them to the public. And it was then that they discovered that the temples had been built perfectly and completely exactly inside a vein of milonite, which is this 300 million year old mineral which transmits literally the energies of the earth. And they asked us, how did you know? And, we said, well, we didn't know it was milonite, but we felt that this was where the energies were. So we had a scientific proof that we were not just, making this up, and it was just not psychic work. It was actually real, that this is a special knot of energies. And this was very important also for the geologists, so much so that they asked us to put this study in their big book that they made for the 20th anniversary. Because also for them, it was the first time that they had to work and study a sacred space. And they found so many new things that it was very special also for them. So again, new friends in this learning process.
The company that make all the measurement was the same of the Monte Bianco tunnel constructions, correct?
Geodata, yes, from Torino.
Geodata, yeah. Many people, they are asking how did a small community won a battle against Italy? I think this is complex because we are talking about many layers, like an onion, correct?
Yeah, no, normally if you want to win a battle, you need to have many friends. So what we did, and this was mostly my work, because I was not directly involved with the legal aspects. I mean, I know I had to study all the legal aspects because I was answering questions from journalists all the time. So I was informed, but I was not the lawyer of Damanhur. I was not working on that particular part, but I was definitely working with the idea of how do we change perception? How do we make Italy, or even better, the world, our friend, helping us to ask government to take a decision that would free the temples after we legalize them? Because, right, as you rightly said, these were two different things. One was to make sure that there was no accusation of any crime, and that was mostly the legal work. But then there was, how long is it going to take the government to make a rule, an amendment to an existing law, something that would allow us to legalize them and open them to people? Because at that point, that is what we wanted. While the temples had been built in secret because they needed to be ready to receive pilgrims, at that point, it was obvious that we had to be ready. And so we wanted the temples not to remain closed anymore. We wanted to have all the legal legislation and protection so that we could do it.
Yeah. And Esperide, it was also a moment where many television all around the world started to be very curious about us, correct?
Yes. That's exactly what we did. Yeah. That was one of the main things, to invite media from all over the world. We had the whole world. I mean, I remember, I was still working in Milano when I was asked to help Damanhur save the temples, and then I quit my job because, well, first I made it part-time, and then I couldn't even keep it part-time because it was
Yes.
constant, and this was,
So
became my
let's
passion
talk.
before becoming my life.
Yeah, let's talk about you. So I want to talk about my point of view. So I remember it was a very critical moment, and of course we were, struggling for save the temple, and I remember very well a day where I saw you, this beautiful blonde girl that seems arrived from the fashion week, and I say that because the Damanhur doesn't like people come from the fashion week in that moment. And you were talking with the head of Damanhur, with Falco, with the lawyers, with the government. So a guest, people completely unknown for the Damanhurian, that was talking to the highest level of the people in Damanhur about the Temple of Humankind. So let's talk about your story. That is
We
why I ask you
did not
to
make
come
me
to talk
very
about it.
popular. Yeah, that stuff did not make me very popular in
It
the
was
beginning.
my real purpose tonight to ask you about your story, because
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting to your story.
Yes. So
And sorry, I'm quite sure that you never really talked about that, uh, to all the people.
no, not really, not really. In Damanhur, we tend to put you always, the common projects before the personal story. So yeah. Again, my personal story is a little bit in the comic book because that was a nice way to tell the story and what happened in those years. So at that time, I lived in Milano. I had just moved back from New York not long before, and I was working as a PR. Not a PR for clubs, but I was working as a PR for governmental institutions, newspapers, big international projects, because my first job was at the European Parliament. I've had experience before with the United Nations. So the international scene was always my world. And I was always, since I was very young, interested in how can I contribute in changing the world. And my conviction up to that time was, okay, international institutions are the best way. So through a friend of mine who's still at Damanhur now, and we're still friends, Anaconda, and I like to say,
Ah,
this-
Anaconda.
thank you.
Ah,
Yeah. I met him in Milano, and in his house, I saw it was not Anaconda yet. He was a yoga teacher, also just came back from the US. So we had a lot in common. We became good friends. And in his house, I saw a leaflet of the Spiritual Hero School of Damanhur. And I was really attracted by this. I don't know, this thing had an energy that I thought, wow, what is this? And he said to me, oh, well, this is a place where I'm going to learn spiritual healing. And one day I'll take you there. And the temples were completely secret. So he didn't know about the temples. So I came once, not with him, on another occasion, and I saw the central part of Damanhur. And I thought, and I came with my very beautiful, Fashion Week Milan boyfriend. And I thought, well, these people are very nice, but really a little too rural for us. And I wasn't really thinking
a
that they
little
would
bit
be.
naive.
Yeah, the temples were secret. It looked like, a group of people living in harmony with nature, um, natural healing, but that was basically it. I thought, okay, fantastic food. I was immediately attracted by Selfica, this energetic technology of Damanhur that I'm now is my main field of research. So that I kind of recognized in me, but let's say I was not particularly interested in joining the process or the project. So this was 1991. In 1992, when the temples were discovered, someone remembered me, remembered that I had come, and remembered what my job was. And so I don't know how that went, but they decided, probably Falco and another group of people decided to call me, to give it, a try. And so I received a phone call in Milano, in my office, from a man whose name was Alce. And this man just talked and talked and talked and talked till I couldn't. My ears were bleeding. And he made me say, yes, I'm coming. So that this was probably the 4th of July or the 5th of July after the police raid, and I came on the 8th of July. That was Saturday. I came convinced of spending a couple of hours and then go and join my friends at the beach because I was tired. It was July, and really, Val Chiusella was raining all the time at that time. And so I came and I thought, okay, let's hear what they have to say. And I walked up the mill, the central part of Damanhur at that time. And there I was met with a group of people. Actually, they were all men, a group of young men. And they
Where I saw you.
that's probably when you saw me. Yeah. And people that I didn't know. So it was kind of
Yeah.
strange. And they opened in front of me this big blueprint. And they said, look, this is the blueprint of this temple that is actually a complex of temples that we've been building inside a mountain for the last 16 years. We built them in secret. Now the police came. We need your help. And at that moment, I just felt that my life would change. And so I said, sure, I'm so happy to help you. I'm going to give a call to my journalist friends, give you their names, and vouch for you. And they said, no, you don't understand. We want you to help us. And I said, no. No, you're asking too much. I don't want to do this. No, I knew my life would change. But anyway, that man kept talking, and obviously he had something special on me because then we ended up marrying. So he must have had something. So he convinced me. And I said, okay. And they said, let's go see them. And this is a fun part of the story that I normally don't tell. But the road to go up to the temples now to most people seems small and difficult. In those exactly. In those years, it was like 1/3 of what it is now. So very tiny road going up the mountain. But on that specific day, that tiny road was blocked. So we couldn't even take that road. We had to take the road through the woods. That
Wow.
but people exactly. So I find myself after a night of clubbing in Milano, so I wasn't particularly lucid, arriving in Damanhur with people telling me about building temples in a car with 4 men that I didn't know in the middle of these woods.
Of the woods.
I didn't know where. This was way before cell phones. No one knew where I was, really, roughly. And I had a moment like, what am I doing? What if this is a cult? What if now I disappear? I think I saw all the possible bad scenarios in my mind for those 20 minutes that like seemed endless. And then we went to the temples, and then of course that all changed, that there was a beautiful woman waiting for me, Junko. So I felt, okay, there's
Junko.
not only men in this community. And I relaxed. And then Falcos arrived, and they took me to see the temples. And there were many Damanhurians there painting, and I could perceive that they were looking at me like, who's this alien? Because I really knew nothing, so I didn't have a context to understand what was the emotional reaction that the Damanhurians were having to me. And I was the first human, not police and not Damanhurian, to enter the temples. And as you said, I looked a little bit like Fashion Week, so I was really dissonant there, and they were looking at me like, why she's here? And why are they taking her around?
And I want to point out that you enter into the temple, but there was a group of Damanhurians that still not know nothing about the temple.
Exactly, which again did not increase my level of popularity with the community.
No, not at all.
I had a few difficult years, I have to admit. It wasn't easy for me in the beginning. But what was easy was that I did not understand, because I didn't have the cultural reference framework to understand what it was that wasn't matching. It took me a long time to understand that. And also the Damanhurians took them a little bit of time to accept me, but it's okay. We all get the lessons that we need to learn, so it's fine. So then I entered the temples, and I remember when I entered the Hall of Water, I had the strangest feeling I have ever had in my life. Like, I felt I'm at home. I knew this place, and at the same time, it was completely foreign to me. Like, I couldn't make sense of anything. And at that moment, I actually almost fainted. And I remember Falco Junco holding me, because I had really a moment where this was too much. It was too strong. I mean, most people today, they come to the temples after they've seen interviews, videos, photographs, stories of friends, and they still have a strong emotional reaction, because they touch you deeply. But not even knowing that they existed, and just, being brought there after you saw a blueprint half an hour before, that was strong. Let's say that was very strong.
Very, very.
And
so then from that moment on,
and then I decided to stay the whole weekend. And then I decided to spend my month of holidays there. And so I canceled all my plans with my friends in Milano, my boyfriend thinking I'd gone completely crazy, which was also not easy to manage that aspect of my life, including my parents, not particularly happy with what was going on. And that, took a few years to negotiate a better understanding of my choice. And then basically for the following 4 years, I was completely absorbed by this mission of helping the Damanhurians save the temples. But I still didn't fully feel these were my temples. I felt I had a mission to help, but when after 4 years everything was done and they were safe, I felt the need to go back to Milano. I still had my apartment there. I moved back to Milano for a couple of months. I really needed to digest and reflect because I hadn't had any time. And after those 2 months, I realized that my previous life was really over. And now this was my way to contribute to the transformation of the world that I always felt I wanted to be in service of. And from that moment, I never had any doubt, except for the normal doubts that every person on a spiritual path encounters daily. But those are doubts to reaffirm your choice, not doubts about what your mission is or where you are in your life.
Yes. Well, what a story. And so, if I remember well, you also worked a lot to connect many networks, for example, televisions from all over the world. So you've chosen to be more visible, more and more visible. So to use this problem as as an option, as a strategy to jump to a new level. I think we can say that it was a moment where Damanhur completely was completely transformed. Maybe as today, moment where we chosen to be open to the world. Correct?
Yes, yeah, I would say again, I do not have a direct reference point of what Daman was before, but I could perceive it and feel it in the resistance of the Damanhurians. Like this was a community that up to that moment basically found its own glue, one of the strongest connecting forces in secret, in keeping a secret with the idea one day this is going to be our gift to humanity. We need to protect it. We need it to keep it secret. And there I arrive, and my brief from Falco, from everyone in Damanhur that I was dealing with, as you said, they were all, like the directors of Damanhur at the time, was make this public, open the temples, tell the story, help us tell this story. So for me, it was very difficult to have to find a way to tell the story with people that didn't want to talk. And it wasn't just talking, it was more of an energetic reaction, because people felt scared is strong to say, but they felt very uneasy at the idea of sharing their deepest secrets with me first, and then with the world. What is the world? Is the world going to be able to understand it? It wasn't so clear yet. What a wonderful occasion to grow and meet new friends and have new people in Damanhur that was. It took some time to realize it.
Yes, I remember that we were, educated to cover, to keep the secret of the temple, because it was the heart of Damanhur. It was, the real core of our mission, and the idea that people not Damanhurian enter into the temple for us was it was a trauma. So we spent time to elaborate, to digest the fact that the temple was started to be public in terms of people know that it exists, and when they entered, it was like an aggression for many of us. So we
Exactly.
spent time to elaborate that shift. Today, it's normal for the people can come to Damanhur. First of all, it's normal that the temple is our temple, and we can use it, we can manage it, and that the public that it's possible to visit the temple. In that moment, the idea to have visitors into the temple was, you know, mm, completely absurd. So
Yeah.
I think you arrived in the moment where we did this huge shift. So right person in the right moment, in the right place.
If I
Because
was the right person, I was the only person.
the only one, but
But who knows? Who
synchronically,
knows?
Anaconda that told about Damanhur to you, you
Yeah,
went
yeah,
to Damanhur. Yes. So from that moment on, a very long battle started. So you were a group of people that are working in different sector, the Italian
yes,
politics with Coboldo and Rinoceronte and Bisonte.
yes.
You and Alce, you were working on the PR. You actually created the PR office. I remember
Yeah, well,
the first PR
yeah,
office,
that time I created the first, I liked it to call it the international office.
international office.
Which also is something that then I gave it a lot of impulse after the temples were finally safe. Then I said, what do I want to do for Damanhur? And I realized that's what I wanted to do. So continue to tell our story, this time not from a this very dangerous position, or we can lose our hearts, as you were rightly calling it, the hearts of Damanhur, but from how can we share a message? How can we awaken together with humanity? How can be in service to that? So yes. So in this, maybe you want to, I know where you're going. You want to ask me one of the funniest episodes of the whole story, right? My night in Torino, my wild night in Torino.
Yes.
So one of the things we did, it was to invite members of parliament to come to the temples and see for themselves what we've done. And of course, it was important to invite members of parliament that could understand maybe something about art. So we read in the newspaper that this
sorry, Spade. Do I remember well that it was part of a strategy to present a script to the Italian government about to create a new law that preserve that keep underground temple in Italy, that there was nothing before, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So there was the reason why the temples had been built in secret in the first place was because there was no authority to go and ask permission to, because there was no rules regulating underground buildings. And also, again, these temples are a miracle. So there would have been no authority saying, yes, you can do this, because nobody would have believed that it was possible to do it without destroying the mountain. So, this was the catch-22 of the end. You cannot ask because they won't believe it, but then at the end, you cannot save them because they still don't believe you. So it was impossible. And because the Damanhurians felt, and Falco felt personally, this was a big part of his mission, and the Damanhurians also felt that this was a part of their purpose for creating Damanhur, they just went ahead and did it. So when finally there was no more crime and a solution had to be found, but there was no legal container in which it would have been easy to say, okay, we apply this rule or we applied that rule, because there were no rules. So we really didn't know. It wasn't clear to us what we could do. And thank you for saying this, because what happened was also that this could have been solved at the local level. If the town government had decided, okay, we create a local rule, we could have solved it. They didn't dare. So they said, we are not doing this. Take it to the province, which is the higher, on top of them, the higher administrative entity. The province said, too much for us. We cannot do this. Take it to the region. So we went to Region Piedmont, and regions in Italy have a lot of power in administration and rulemaking. The region said, this thing is too big for us. We cannot find a solution. Take it to the government. So at that point, we had to find a strategy to engage politicians at the national level. We didn't know what would be the road to solve the problem. What we knew is that there was no other way than calling in actually Rome, the parliament in Rome, with the Senate and the chamber in Rome. So we started thinking, okay, who can we invite? And of course, we could have invited, and we did, the local MPs, but they were not particularly significant in this. So we decided to invite this MP, who is a very famous art critic in Italy, and very well known. And he was at the time also a member of the majority party in Italy. So he was a member of the government, which was also for us very important, because we could have gone with others, but if they're not part of the government, then our impact would have been limited. So we read in the newspaper that he was given a conference to present a talk, to present a new book that he just wrote in Torino, in the bookstore in the center. So I dressed up like Fashion Week again.
The blonde.
At that time it was necessary, because it was well known for being very sensitive to, let's say, women's charm. So I went with another Damanhurian, with Alce, who was at the time my partner, and we went. And at the end, I managed to catch his attention, and I showed him photographs of the temples. And I said, look, I come from this community. This is what we built. Would you like to come and see this? And he said, oh, I heard about it. I'd like to come and see it. And he said, but I'm leaving tomorrow morning. I said, no problem. We go now. He said, no, I cannot come now. Let's go after dinner. I have to go to dinner. And I said, fine. Tell me your hotel, and I'll be there waiting for you after dinner so we can take you. And he said, no problem. So, yeah, I know. This is very funny. This was like 8 p.m. Okay? After dinner.
9, 10 p.m., 11
say
p.m.
11,
you will be ready.
Say 11. So I go to his hotel. When we eat something quickly, we go to his hotel and we wait. Midnight, 1, 2, 3, 3:30. He arrives at 3:30. completely, let's say, he had been
Very
partying.
long dinner.
He had been partying, and there was a lot of people with him. And I say, okay, you ready? We go. And he was like in shock. He's like, you still here? And I said, yeah. You said we will go after dinner. This is after dinner. Are you up to it? He said, yeah, I just have to do a few things. So he had to sign some documents. I don't know what it was. So we spent there another half hour. And then at 4 a.m, we left. So I called the Damanhur and I said, we're coming. We entered the temples at 5 a.m. They left at 7 a.m. And and after
So he had breakfast.
Yeah, we gave him breakfast to him and his group because he didn't want to come alone. We said, okay, bring whoever you want. So it was him and a few other people. And then at 7 after breakfast, he left. And he was very instrumental in then helping us find a solution. So in the end, they didn't even create a new law for us. What they did, they made an amendment to the following year's financial law. So basically, they put a little clause saying that buildings built underground that had no purpose of being commercial and where such and such and such could be made legal. And so that was the only one existing in Italy. So they didn't make it saying the temples of humankind, but they said buildings of this kind, and they added to this existing overarching law that was approved in toto. So this just went through it. And that's when we started to be able to, do all the assessments, pay what we had to pay, and finally put them in perfect conformity with all the European Union rules for safety, so that we can bring people. Because that was also another big thing. Like, you build underground, if you want to bring people, first of all, you need to have an insurance, of course. But the second thing is it has to be in compliance with safety norms.
Wow. So to repeating the question that someone sent us, how did a small community win a battle against Italy? We can say that we won a battle because we were able, with a lot of strength and a lot of love and a very clear idea, we were able to change the Italian law because of
well,
the
more than
change.
change, I wouldn't say we changed the Italian
Or
law.
unreached, or
we managed to reach the Italian government so that they could add this specific clause to an existing law that was being approved. But we did that not only because of that politician, we did that because we had asked people through the media that came to visit Damanhur. Some were very negative. And in spite of the beautiful images, they wrote horrible things that were lies. And I remember a journalist from the BBC, and this was BBC television. We had a wonderful time when this journalist was here. We were anticipating a beautiful, newsreel. And the night that it was going to be broadcast, he called me personally to say that he was very sorry and he had no power upon the editing that had been done at the BBC after his work, because there was a specific order there that they couldn't say anything positive about what had to be portrayed as a cult. So we had many negative ones, but we also had many positive ones. And to all the positive ones, we asked people, please write letters to the Italian government saying that we need to save the temple. We need to save this work of art. And so the Italian government received many, many, many letters from abroad and started to say, wait, but this is not just an Italian thing. It's not local. We got to deal with this. And in Italy, we had teams of people, Damanhurians and friends, going around all over Italy, showing photos of the temples and asking people in the streets to sign a petition. So then we sent to Rome, to the government, like many, many, many boxes of pieces of paper with so many signatures. The internet didn't exist at the time, so we couldn't do it that way. We did it the old-fashioned way. Paper, pen and going to meet people in person. So as you were saying in the beginning, so many different strategies together, or so many ways that made us all much stronger and made us see that if a group of people are united, not only they can do something so incredible and extraordinary like building the temples, but they can actually keep them, save them, and be so strong that the government listens to you, and then in the end it even says bravo, because then we had many more politicians that wanted to come and see the temples because of their own pleasure, and they all said wow. And this hopefully today is giving prestige also to Italy.
Wow, what a story. And by the way, thanks to this story today, all around Italy, everyone that wants to build something, an underground temple, can do it because of our story, because of this, because what we did.
No, don't say this,
no?
because no, absolutely not. No.
It's not correct. Okay, sorry.
No, this is what I said. This is what I said. There was never a law passed to authorize this. Okay? What was authorized was a building already existing that had the characteristics that
already exists.
the temple had. So otherwise now people will start digging in Italy and then they come to you. No. But maybe one day, why not?
Okay, thank you very much, because the story, it's amazing. And of course, as you said, in the comics, in the Damanhurian comics, is described the story, part of the story, because tonight you gave us some more interesting aspect in the bottom line of the story. So thank you very much. We have to close. Thank you to be here with us. I want to remember to the people that they can subscribe to the community, and also the people they can also see the other calls we did. And so see you again, Esperide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Nyomo, because this was such an important turning point in my life that it touches me to think about it again. So thank you.
Yes, that's why I asked you to join us. Con voi.
Con voi.